This episode of Gather and Go is sponsored by Colette. Colette has been the leader in the group travel industry since 1918. With more than 170 expertly curated tours and 5 distinct travel styles from small groups to cruising and beyond, there's a tour to fit your group's unique needs. Plus, Colette makes it easy to set up and manage your group travel program, providing you with local support, marketing materials, and more. Led by local experts in the area, every detail is taken care of, meaning your group just has to pack their bags and go. Learn more at gocollette.com/groups. Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to Gather and Go, the podcast that helps you plan, promote, and lead better trips. I'm Brian Jewell. I'm your host. I am feeling lovely today on this day in mid-February, and I think that you are going to love today's featured conversation with Jeff Jenkins. If you haven't heard of Jeff, he is a plus-size travel personality and host of the NatGeo TV show Never Say Never. And when you listen to this conversation, you're going to hear Jeff talk about some of the cultural perceptions that might be keeping people from traveling with you. He's also going to share his thoughts on why you might be missing opportunities in the plus-size market and how you can make your trips more attractive to travelers of all sizes. Jeff's a great guy. This is a fascinating conversation. I can't wait for you to hear it. First, though, let's get into some travel news you may have missed. Celebrity Cruises is getting into the river cruise market. Royal Caribbean Group, the parent company of Celebrity and several other cruise lines, announced it will introduce a premium river cruise product in 2027. The new product, which will be branded as Celebrity River Cruises, will launch with 10 new river ships, which will be designed to replicate the aesthetic of Celebrity's Edge series ocean liners. Each of the new ships will carry about 180 passengers and will welcome adults as well as families with children. Royal Caribbean Group CEO Jason Liberty said that about half the company's customers have taken or would like to take a river cruise. He also said that if customers respond enthusiastically to Celebrity River Cruises, the company may explore launching another river cruise product under its luxury brand, Silversea. Royal Caribbean Group said it plans to sail on rivers in Europe and other destinations around the world, and that it will begin taking bookings later this year. Well, now it's time for the road tip segment of our show. This is the part of every episode where we reach deep into our bag of travel knowledge from decades on the road and bring you tips to make your next trip less stressful and more successful. You know, if you came into my house today, walked into the kitchen, and opened one of my kitchen cabinets, you would see it stuffed full of water bottles. That's right, my wife and increasingly my 10-year-old daughter are huge fans of water bottles. We have more water bottles in our house than I know what to do with. And we have water bottles of every size, variety, brand. We've got those fashion water bottles. In fact, my 10-year-old girl loves to carry like a 40-ounce Stanley water bottle to school with her. It's mostly for the look. It's also about as big as she is. I have no idea how she carries that thing around all day. But we are big water drinkers here in the Jewell house, and when I go on the road, I try to take that habit with me for all kinds of reasons. Obviously, staying hydrated when you travel is important, keeps you healthy, keeps your energy levels up, makes you less susceptible to all sorts of nasty things that can happen on the road. One of the things that I have found recently that makes it a lot easier to stay well hydrated when I travel is if I bring a great travel water bottle with me. A great water bottle obviously keeps water cold. It allows you to cut down on the amount of single-use plastics you're consuming when you travel. There are many, many benefits of it. So I thought today for our road trip, I would tell you what I think the criteria for a great water bottle are. And in fact, I'm also going to give you a link to what is maybe my very favorite travel water bottle. And I've got to tell you, I have tested this and tested it and tested it. You know that cabinet full of water bottles we've got? Well, I have taken most of them out on the road in one way or another. So my tips for you today are based on my personal experience. So if you want to drink more water on the road, if you want a better, colder taste of water on the road, here are 5 things you need to look for in a travel water bottle. Number 1, you need to look for durability. Having a travel bottle won't do you any good if the plastic breaks, if the nozzle leaks, if something goes wrong and you can't use it anymore, or it's going to leak water all over your bag or your hands or your vehicle. That's no good. So when it comes to travel water bottle, I look for a more durable material than simple plastic. Usually that means for me, I'm looking for stainless steel. Now, stainless steel has another benefit, and that is criteria number 2. You're looking for insulation. Insulated water bottles are all the rage these days. You can buy them, well, pretty much anywhere you buy anything. If you want a really good cold drink of water, I mean, a bottle that's going to keep water cold from morning to night, then I would suggest looking for something that is triple insulated. Stainless steel on the inside, also has a metal exterior with a nice coated grip that helps you hold on to it better so you don't risk dropping the bottle. But the insulation in between those layers is really what does the magic of keeping your water cold. So you're looking for something with durability and insulation. You're also looking for the right size. And here's where things get tricky. As I mentioned, it's very fashionable today to carry a 40 ounce or 50 ounce or 60 ounce water bottle around. I can understand why you might want to do that in certain situations, but I don't think that is right for travel. In a great travel water bottle, I'm looking for something that is about 18 ounces or smaller, and I'll tell you why. When I travel, I've got to fit that travel water bottle in a variety of settings in order for it to be convenient. And if that bottle is not convenient for me to use, I'm not going to drink from it as often, and I'm kind of defeating the purpose of bringing it with me. So I love that 16 or 18 ounce bottle because I can slip it into one of the exterior sleeves on my backpack that makes it very easy to access as I'm moving around in a city or on an airplane. I can also stick it in the seat back pocket of an airplane or a motor coach seat. If you get a bigger, thicker water bottle than that, it becomes difficult to slip it into that seat back pocket. So a smaller, slimmer profile really serves you well there. It's also easier to fit those bottles in your car or maybe a motor coach cup holder, and they also fit better in a hotel refrigerator. Now, in addition to those things, I'm also looking for a water bottle with a convenient carrying mechanism. For years, I used a travel bottle that met many of my criteria, but it had no kind of handle or strap or anything like that. And I found it really cumbersome and tiresome to have to hold the body of the bottle in my hands everywhere I went. That's no good. So you're looking for something that has some sort of strap or handle that may be able to snap on or over the top of the bottle. There's all kinds of designs for that. Many of them work well, but you want to look for something that you can slip around your wrist or carry with 1 or 2 fingers so that it leaves most of your hands free for taking photos, for carrying other gear, for eating while you go, all the things you might do in the course of a typical day on the road. And finally, I think in a great travel water bottle, you need a straw spout. Now, there are a number of different ways that water bottles can be designed. You might like bottles with straws that you can sip out of. You might like bottles with big wide openings that you can take big swigs out of. When it comes to travel, I think a straw is more convenient. And that's because it lowers the risk of accidentally spilling on yourself. If you have the opening that is designed for taking big drinks out of, and you tip it up too far, you risk accidentally spilling water all over your face, all over your clothes. I say this because I've done it. I've done it more than once. And this is not something you want to have happen when you're on the road, when you may not have a towel handy, when you certainly don't have a change of clothes handy. We want to minimize the risk of spills, and that means using that straw mechanism. Another benefit of the straw is you don't have to tilt your head up so far to use it. You're able to continue looking straight forward at whatever it is you came to see while you take that sip of water. Now, my favorite travel water bottle has this really cool system where it has a straw spout and an opening for you to swig if you want to. It's a really cool design. I'm going to link to it in the show notes. It's made by a company called Awala. Awala is not a sponsor of Gather and Go. I really love this water bottle. Out of all the ones we have tested, this has become the Jewel family favorite. They make a great travel water bottle called the Owala Free Sip Twist. I'm linking to that in the show notes. So if you are a thirsty traveler, if you know you need to drink more water on the road, if you want to cut down on the amount of trash you create by buying water bottles while you travel, grab this travel water bottle or some other bottle that meets these criteria. I guarantee it's going to leave you better hydrated and with less mess, and you're going to enjoy your next trip more. That is your road tip of the week. Now, before we move on, I want to take just a minute to share a little bit of news from us. I hope by now you know about our on-site familiarization program. This is a program we do in partnership with destinations around the country and sometimes around the world to create opportunities for you to visit firsthand on great fam tours. And I have a new tour to tell you about for 2025. We've already announced some great tours for this year, but I'm excited to tell you that we're going to be taking a group of tour planners and tour operators to Savannah, Georgia, July 27th through 30th. If you haven't been to Savannah, you need to get there. It is one of the most popular and historic destinations in the Southeast. And when you join us on this fam tour, you're going to get to experience a trolley tour through this magical historic city. We're going to visit the American Prohibition Museum, which is a very cool interactive museum. You're going to get to go on a dolphin tour in the Atlantic and see some of these fascinating animals up close in the wild. Of course, you're going to tour one or two historic homes that the city is known for, as well as some of the amazing historic churches and other houses of worship that really tell the story of faith in America. Now, if this sounds like a great trip to you, you can apply to attend right now by going to grouptravelleader.com/Savannah-fam. And don't worry, I'm putting that link in the show notes so you don't have to remember it. Go today and fill out an application. We always have many more people interested in coming in these fams than we actually have spots on the trips. So your best chance of getting to join us is to apply today at grouptravelleader.com/Savannah-fam. And hey, anytime you want to know about the fam opportunities we have, you can find a list of every one of them and sign up for notifications about fam news at grouptravelleader.com/fams. Well, it's just about time for us to get into our featured conversation with Jeff Jenkins. Before we do, let me remind you, you don't need to worry about taking notes because I am taking notes for you. You can find information about some of the most important things we talk about in the show notes for this episode, which of course is the text below the audio player wherever you're listening to this podcast. And I'm also going to come back after the interview with Jeff and hit a few of the highlights that he and I talked about just to make sure you don't miss some of his most important insights. I want to encourage you to stick around to the end of that wrap up because after that, I want to talk to you about the number one thing I think the American government should be doing for the travel industry and for American travelers overall. That's going to be the topic of today's Hot Minute. You won't want to miss that. We'll be right back with Jeff Jenkins. All right, everybody, I want to take a minute to tell you about our sponsor, Colette. Because Colette's tours are designed by travelers for travelers, your group will visit must-see sites like La Sagrada Familia and the crown jewels of Scotland. But they'll also get to know the people of their destination, like truffle hunters, pearl divers, and cheesemakers. Plus, Colette makes filling and promoting your tour easy. There's no deposit or minimum group size required, so your booking is totally risk-free. Colette also provides free marketing materials to help promote the tour to your community with the help of your own local business development manager, who can answer any questions you may have. Now, these are just a few reasons to partner with Colette for your group travel program. Visit gocolette.com/groups to get started. All right, everybody. My guest today is an award-winning travel blogger, influencer, podcast host, and speaker based in Austin, Texas. After starting his career as a high school choir teacher, he launched the blog Chubby Diaries to document his adventures as a plus-size traveler and encourage people like him to explore the world. In 2023, he starred in the National Geographic TV series Never Say Never, which features some of his most incredible travel adventures. Jeff Jenkins, welcome to the podcast.
Oh man, appreciate you. I'm glad to be here today. And I like that bio. Can I get that? I'm just be honest with you. I like how you shake that. That was perfect.
Man, feel free to use it wherever you want. We're so excited to have you here. I heard you speak at a conference a couple years ago and thought this is somebody our tourism community needs to get to know and needs to hear from. So I wonder if you could take us to a moment in your travel journeys, anytime in the last 5 years or so, where
Okay.
you said to yourself, I can't believe that someone like me gets to do what I'm doing right now.
Oh man, this tons of those moments. I would say, and I could talk about the show, and I would. So I remember it was me recording my first episode. We were out in New Zealand, and we were getting ready to do like the final challenge, which was to go whitewater rafting
Mm,
down a waterfall, and we had to stop and hold for the camera. And man, like there was like these like walls, like these stone walls, and it like that's where the river went through,
mm,
and it 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 was so much like lush, like greenery and things like that. So it felt like a jungle almost.
yeah.
And I just remember just sitting there and just was like I was on what is it, the kayak? What is it called? The float?
The
The
raft or
raft.
something.
That was it,
Yeah.
raft. Yeah. I was on the raft and I just sat there and was just like, man, I cannot believe this is my job. And I just it felt like little Jeff, like being on an adventure in his room when he was a kid and just imagining doing something like this and to actually be doing it and traveling around the world. That's when I knew I was like, oh man, this is like something to be grateful for.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. So, what did little Jeff dream about? What were the sorts of travel dreams you were dreaming, or maybe not dreaming? If you thought the travel was not for somebody like you.
Yeah, I think I used to always get excited about like any of movies or TV shows. Like I remember when Big Bird went to China, and
Mm,
I was like, "Oh, that's so cool!" So I always loved travel in that sense, but I never thought that travel was something that I could do. So I was able to just dream up stuff when I was a little kid of like being in just foreign places or being under the sea or in the sky in an airplane or even in space. And so that was the things that I got to dream of. And I think at the time I thought of like travel as like going to space. Like
mm,
like only a certain few people get to do that. And so
mm.
I didn't know anyone in my circle, close circle, that was like traveling and going international. So it was like one of those things where I didn't see that representation.
Yeah. So tell us more about the circle you were in and why travel wasn't part of it. Was it just that travel's expensive? Was it that a cultural thing? Was it, about like, well, I don't see people that look like me in travel? How did your mindset get to that point?
Yeah, it was all of it. And like now since I've been traveling for a while and things like that, I have a lot of my non-melanated friends that traveled that would tell me stories about like, oh yeah, my parents took me there when I was a kid, or my grandparents took me over to Germany or Italy, or we went to go see our family, which is another thing, cultural part. Yeah, we
Mhm.
had family in Jerusalem, we had family in Italy, we had family in Spain, so we went over there to see our other side of the family, and so for that, that's something that my family did not have, and so I just felt like culturally was there. I think it's not that people didn't have the money, it's what they decided to spend the money on. And
Mm,
and travel wasn't the thing that they felt like they could spend it on or should spend it on. Not knowing that like, oh man, this is just like one experience that you get to have. But I'm a person, I'd rather not have that much in my house and have all the travel experiences I can. That's what actually brings more joy to my life. And so it was a mixture of everything and then not seeing yourself.
yeah. Do you feel like, specifically in the Black community, do you feel like that is something that is changing? Travel is becoming a higher priority or something that more people have access to?
Yeah, I think it's more accessible. And like I told you about that representation, like once people saw themselves over there, because when I first started traveling almost 20 years ago, like I literally was one of the only people within my community that had ever been. I went to Japan and that became a big deal. Like all my friends'
Mm,
family or all my parents, like friends and family, everybody was like over there, like, wow. Jeff's going to Japan. Hey, did you hear Jeff's going to Japan? So like they made a big deal of it because like they didn't know anybody that went to Japan. And I remember right before I left to go to Japan, I met a woman that stayed across the street from my dad, and she never left the city limits of Orlando. And
Wow.
she was like 60 years old at the time.
Wow.
And that blew my mind. Like
Yeah.
just blew it. Like my head exploded almost. Like what? Like how? And so that to me just showed me like that's not what I want and I want more. And so, and then when I got to go to these other places, like I was one of the only Black people I ever saw there. And so it wasn't until social media started becoming more prevalent. Once Instagram came out, I really feel like it was Instagram more than Facebook. But once people got to see pictures and they got to see videos and all the guys started coming out and they seen people that looked like them over there doing it, they was like, oh, I guess I can go do it. So now I have cousins and friends that all travel now that didn't do it before.
Yeah. I love that. So 20 years ago, you said you kind of started traveling. What was the impetus that made you say, I'm ready to get out of here and go see something?
Well, I did this program in college called Camp Adventure, and so we got to be camp counselors on American military bases to the students that live there, and
Okay.
so that's what like got me there. And I remember the day I heard about the program was I met my friend, and it was the day before she was going to Japan, and I said, wait, like you're this young 19-year-old Black girl gonna go to Japan, like Japan. I remember saying it like Japan, and she was like, yeah. And I remember at that moment, I was like, well, shoot, if she can go, I guess I can go too, then, you know? And I committed that I was gonna do that program next year and I was gonna go to Japan. And I literally had to wait almost a year just to get the opportunity to go, but I got to go. And that's where I got bit by the travel bug. And it was on ever since.
Yeah. So walk us through that career progression. You finish college, you end up
Mhm.
teaching high school choir, and then fast forward to, the 2020s, and you are one of the biggest travel personalities in the country. How did all that happen?
Well, yeah, my stepfather unfortunately passed. He was the man that raised me, but it really made me ask the question like, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? Do I want to keep teaching? So, and I knew the answer was no because I wanted to like resign from teaching like almost every other year.
Oh, wow.
So I never had thought I was going to work into like public school. So that was never like the thing that I wanted to do, but I was trying to figure out once I resigned, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. I started like my friend asked me, "Hey, you ever thought about being an entrepreneur?" So I got into like reselling books on Amazon. That was the first thing I did, and then I went on a mission trip to build gardens. And while we were there, came back. Me and my friends, four of my friends, we came back and was like, "Hey, I think we want to start a water well project in Rwanda." And so we started a water well project. And it was while I was building those water wells, the first water well, we actually only built one water well, actually. We went and built the water well. And while I was there, I asked the question of like, if money wasn't an obstacle and whatever I was to dream up was to actually happen for me, what would I do? And so I had to like, I went through it like, oh, maybe I'll become a doctor. Maybe I'll become a lawyer. Maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll do that. But it hit me. And it was I remember, and I don't think I've ever said this on any interview, and I've done a lot of them. Um, I remember there was a moment in my head where I was like, hey, Jeff, question or think about the things that like some people might be like, you're crazy to do that. Like that'd be crazy of you to go for that. And I think most of my questions or my answers before were all like safe, like careers, like becoming a doctor. People would be like, oh my God, that's so admirable. Cool for you. So to me, I was like, you know what? I want to like travel the world, help people and get paid to do it. And it took 3 days to get to that point. And I remember at looking out in the hills and saying it out loud. And I committed that day to doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah. What an amazing story. So in the travel industry,
Mhm.
people are putting a big emphasis on inclusivity these days. And it's certainly a conversation I hear around race and being racially sensitive, racially inclusive. Part of your platform certainly has to do with race, but part of it has to do with body size, body shape. You make no bones about the fact you're a big guy. Is that part of inclusivity getting any traction in travel right now, or is there still a long way to go?
Oh no, it definitely has the traction, and I not to toot my own horn, but beep beep. Like I really have dedicated a lot of my time and life in the past 6, 7 years to do this. Like I really have a passion for making a change within the travel industry. I want to redefine what travel looks like, and I want to make travel more accessible for plus size people. And I tell people all the time, like, I'm not here to promote obesity. What I am here to promote is live life now. I want people to travel around the world no matter their size. And so
Mm,
a lot of times you find out that when these things were being created, like excursions or these airplanes and the transportation that we take, like it's a one size fit all kind of method, and a lot of times it kind of left out people, and so and the people, some people that they leave out is the plus size people, and so or the plus size community. So I wanted to make sure that when people are starting to plan and start to build new things with these different companies and engineers, like, hey, how about you have us in mind when y'all do this? And the way that I was able to go about it, and I don't know who this man is. I still like I think I can try to find him. And after this call, like I think now my brain's gonna rack up, but I'll never forget. He's the one that got me to think about it. And he was a guy from American Airlines and he did marketing. And
mm.
he said, you want to know something? The way to get to people's like get people to listen is talk about the bottom line. And so that's what I feel like made me more successful in being able to talk to these different CEOs and corporations and industry leaders was, hey, there is an untapped market that has money, or this marginalized group of people that have money, and y'all haven't tapped into it. So there's a whole nother money revenue system in there, like that y'all can like create and be able to utilize. And I think that has helped in so many different ways and has taken some of these companies to the next level.
Do you have any sort of sense? It can be anecdotal or certainly, data if you have it. Any sort of sense about what the missed opportunity is right now, the size of it, or the scope of the opportunities that tourism professionals are missing because they're either not building product that's accessible to larger people, or just not messaging or marketing in a way that makes those people feel included.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely go anecdotal on here. And I thought about putting out, getting the whole thing going, a survey and study. But I would say that like, well, 42% of people, and I'm not just talking like plus size, I'm talking like overweight and obese kind of ways. And so that's at 42% of America. So we're looking at, I think, 160 million people.
Mm,
And so that's 160 million people that y'all aren't catering to at all. And so I do feel like that's billions of dollars being left on the table, even if some of these people were talking like, hey, I'm thinking about taking, if, now one thing I did do, I did like my own independent study one time of like 2,000 votes, where I said, if travel was more accommodating for you, would you take an extra trip? And 98% of them said yes. And so
wow.
I do think that people want to do it and they can do it. They just want to make sure that they want to feel like they're able to do it or have just as much of as a good time as somebody who's not plus size.
Yeah. Give us two or three examples of some of those really practical things that maybe are obstacles to larger people, or that the travel companies could easily tweak to make it welcoming to people of all sizes.
Well, yeah, just and what I would just say is like, okay, well, first, like when I married my wife, she's not plus size, and when we got married and we went on a trip together, I was she was like, "Oh, I'll sit in the middle seat," and I was like, "Oh man, you said that really quickly, didn't you?" And I was like, "Man, you never think about like," and it dawned on me. I was like, "Hey, do you ever think about like size restrictions or weight limits?" And she said, "No, never." And I was like, "Wait, your whole life you never thought about this?" And she's
Mm,
like, And I was like, "What?" Like ever since I was like 8 years old, I thought about size restrictions and weight limits. So
wow.
if I always tell people, and I've done this in a lot of my consulting, has been like, okay, humans are very smart.
Mm,
Like literally, like they're they're really smart and they can be very innovative. And if we can get hundreds of people to be on one aircraft, I'm pretty sure we can find a way to make something more accessible or modify any kind of excursion. Like we can almost do anything, right? And so even with the TV show, the one thing that I saw was, and I'll give you one practical example, is um, me being able to go rock climbing and things like that, or needing a harness to go rappelling. So, like the harnesses out there, there are harnesses that are made for my size. And I
Wow.
guess they made these harnesses for like workers and stuff like that that work in like different industries and stuff like that, construction. So they have ropes and things that are my size. There's zip lines that can hold 5,000 pounds. There's not a
Wow.
person in the world that's a 5,000 pounds. So
Right.
it's like there's small little modifications that can be made, or just going to buy an extra BCD or buying a wetsuit that can fit someone. Like instead of just stopping at 2X, go all the way to 5X, you know? And so that just opened up the door to multiple people being able to do something. And so, or just get these custom made. And some of these custom made, you don't need extra, like you don't need 100 extra. How about you just get 3 or 4 and just have them there? A lot of hotels that I partnered with in the past, like they now have extended sizes on their robes. And that was
Mm.
one thing that I used to make fun of all the time. I used to put on the robes that had the one size fit all. I couldn't wear it. And so I used to make posts about it, like, hey, they said one size fits all. Like, look at me, guys. And so to have like the Fairmonts that have these larger sizes, and they only have like a handful extra of these sizes, but it's enough to make it be accessible for other people to come. And it makes other plus size people want to go to those places because they want to get into a robe.
Yeah. So, how should a travel company go about, number one, getting that message out that says, "Hey, we are ready to accommodate you, no matter how big or small you are." But
Mhm.
number two, how do they create that avenue for the customer before they arrive to say, "Oh, by the way, I need a bigger size," because you don't want to create that situation where someone might feel embarrassed or shy to say that. So, practically, how do we make that easy and take away any of the stigma?
Well, yeah. Well, one, I think just think about it ahead of time. Like I told you before, it's just one of those things of like out of sight, out of mind. Like I just never had to think about this. And so, hey, what's the largest you got?
Mm.
Can this be extended? Can we just bring an extra couple of these? Like, can we order a few of these? And so now, because a lot of things are recycled, especially like when you do excursions, a lot of
Hmm.
stuff is recycled, they're cleaned and like used again. So it's like in your inventory, have in your inventory just extra of these different things. Also, it depends. Well, one, if you're doing like an excursion or you're having your own trip or something like that, a lot of this stuff should already have been thought of and ahead of time. Or if you're planning it, to think about it now, like to have a plus size person in mind when you are developing or planning or creating the trip that you're planning. And so it's to almost eliminate some of that. But I don't know, like I'm not saying that everybody's perfect or even anybody thought about it ahead of time, and I think that's more so your question. A lot of times it's just to find out, like, hey, like this, like when we say travel is for all, like we mean it. And then you can go ahead and just ask these questions of like, hey, like what's your size? Like all that stuff. I think people will know that, especially if they know that in the messaging that, hey, we're gonna do our damnedest to make sure that people of all sizes can do this. And that's the one thing I love about the diving community. Like I feel like every instructor I have met all over the world, they all say the same thing. They be like, "Hey man, diving's for everyone."
Mm.
And I've never seen the most like the lack of like bias from a group of people than I have with divers. Like they don't. I mean, at least they don't show it or they say it because I've been around places like, "Ew," like I don't know if this is gonna work with them. But with the diving people, they was like, "Hey man, let's figure out how to make this work. We're gonna figure it out." And like that part excites me as well. So it's like be like the dive community, be like the dive instructors of like, hey, and that's one of the biggest things of talking about like safety. Like you're going to take somebody underground, and a lot of times people like to push back, but they was like, oh, but we just want to be safe. We just want to make sure we're safe. And that's where I go back to again. Humans are smart. We're
Mm.
innovative. We can figure this thing on out. And so
Yeah.
that's what I feel like coming with that kind of mindset of like, hey, everything's figure outable. We'll figure this out and we'll make it safe so that this person can enjoy themselves.
I love that. Diving is for everybody. Travel should be for everybody. I feel like travel marketing and travel ads and images stick to a pretty defined look, you know,
Mhm.
uh, youngish people, attractive people, people that fit a certain mold. What would it do for you and people who feel and look like you if they started seeing not just diverse skin tones, but diverse body types in travel marketing?
I mean, it'll get them out. It'll get them out there. They'll start traveling. They'll go out themselves. Once again, that representation, if they see themselves represented, it'll implore them to be like, oh man, I see myself doing this now. Like, oh, Jeff's out there doing it. Oh, I guess I can go do it too. Or I seen that cute couple out there at the beach. Oh, me and my cute husband over here, we can go do the same thing, you know? So it's that kind of thing. It's power in the messaging, it's power in images. And it's funny because when I go to like sandals or I see their ads and then I see the people at the sandals, I'm like, hey guys, you feel me? They're not young and fit and hip.
No.
Some of them aren't. So it's it's that, but I don't know.
Yeah. When you are thinking about where you want to travel next, whether it's just personal travel, travel with your wife, or something related to your brand and your profession,
Mhm.
what kinds of images or videos or messaging are resonating with you and make you think, "Oh, I got to try that. I want to go there. I have to put this on my list."
A lot of YouTube,
Yeah.
a lot of social media. So TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Like I'm looking at it all, and I am a content creator, so I'm doing it. But then, oh man, I'm over here just scrolling, and I'm like, ooh, where's that? Or somebody just gets it from a different angle. Or I've been to Paris 6, 7 times, and I was like, oh, I didn't know that was there. So it's like people being able to share their stories and those kind of images are the things that bring me in the most. But that's why there's a lot of brands that partner with me so I can be able to share parts of their city or their state or their country and be able to share my experience and share it with my audience. So it gets other people to want to come out there too.
Yeah. So you did something that I think a lot of travel influencers, travel journalists only get to dream about, which is making a travel TV show. Tell us a little bit about what that experience was like and how maybe it's similar and how it's different to, just being a traveler who doesn't have a camera crew following you.
Well, yeah. Well, one, there's a camera crew following. Yeah, that's it's like as a content creator, you're the one that's doing it all. Like you're the guy that has like all the instruments like strapped up to your shoulder to where you playing the drums and the keys, all of that at
Hmm.
the same time. And so I feel like as a content creator, you're the producer, you're the sound person, you're the cameraman, you're all of these different things. And with the TV show, everybody has like one job.
Mm.
And so it's multiple people doing different jobs. And so I think that to me is beautiful. There also is like just this element of, hey, there's money and there's an investment into this product, this project, to where stuff that I only could dream of doing or had to get some kind of partnership. Like man, Nat Geo and Disney, they're like, hey, here you go, like let's go
Right.
make some magic, and you're like, okay, let's do it. So I feel like with a bigger budget comes bigger risk, or not bigger risk, but bigger experiences. And having the name like Nat Geo and being like, hey, we're Nat Geo and we want to come shoot here. Like people open up the doors all the time. And I remember we shot in Japan at this temple. First time they allowed somebody to come shoot there ever in the 500 years of that temple being there.
Wow.
How mind blowing is that, you know? And so
It's
it's just
crazy.
like, yeah, they've never let a camera crew go up there, and people have asked, is what I've heard through the time. Like I have
Yeah.
somebody come talk to me after the fact, and he even brought it up again. Like I can't believe they let you shoot there, like you know. But it's
Yeah.
Nat Geo, so it's really cool how like Nat Geo being one of the gold standards of like the travel space. and storytelling, I think it's been an honor to just even be a part of.
How exciting, man. I love that. So where can people watch the show, read the blog, connect with you on social media?
Yeah, you can follow me on all social media channels at Chubby Diaries. And right now, you can find the show on Amazon for purchase. You know how like shows cycle? So right
Yeah.
now, my show's on a cycle. So if you want to wait and see it later, it'll pop up. But if you want to see it now, you can go to Amazon and you can purchase this season, which I recommend people doing anyway, so you can have it for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Well, before we let you go, we have some questions that we ask every guest, and these are just for
Okay.
fun. So answer off the top of your head, no pressure. When you're booking travel, do you like to book a window seat or an aisle seat?
I'll see.
Yeah. Just need that space.
Or big time. One, I sit first class now, but it's not even that.
Flex, flex, flex.
No, I mean, I travel too much, man. I got to be on something. But you
Yeah.
know, when like with the aisle seat, like okay, so yeah, if I was sitting in economy or anything like that, it'd definitely be the window because you only have to worry about one side of your body.
Mm,
But I like being in the aisle because it's just access to the bathroom if I got to get up and go potty.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And again, one of those things that like, a quote unquote normal sized person may not think about is like, well, I'm worrying about my body on both sides. So
Yeah.
it's, yeah,
Mhm.
that's really insightful to remember for the rest of us.
And even first class seats, like that's another thing. Like these seats are like regular seats, the normal seats that most people sit in on a day-to-day basis. And like the airline seats, nobody sits in seats like that on a day-to-day basis, like in America. So
Yeah.
it even shows you like, hey, we do have these seats, but they want you to charge like a arm and a leg for them sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. You got to mortgage your house to fly first class overseas. Definitely. Yeah. All right. So what's something that's always in your carry-on that you wouldn't travel without?
Mm. Deodorant. Let me stop. But no, literally no. Man, I'm always bringing my headphones. Like I almost feel I almost feel naked without them.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine just being on a plane without them.
Oh, I
It
know.
almost gets scary at that point.
Yeah, what am I going to do? Somebody might try to talk to me. So if you had a free airline pass, and we can make it a first class pass because you are a
Thank you.
first class guy, Jeff. If you had a free airline pass in a week with nothing else to do, where would you be headed next?
If we went to Antarctica, I'll go to Antarctica, but I'll take Amalfi Coast in Italy.
Oh, have you been?
No, I haven't. That's on my list.
I haven't either, and it's high up on my list too. But I figure like there's no way to spend too much time in Italy, right? Like
Come
as
on.
many opportunities as you get to go to Italy, you take them.
Yeah, and nobody ever invites me out to Italy, so I always got to go on my own. So I got to get back out there because I love Italy.
All right, Italy Tourism Board, you heard it here. Jeff is available.
Yes, he is.
Get in touch. All right, last question. What's one thing you have seen or done on the road that you wish you could go back and experience again with somebody you love?
Almost everything I've done. It's interesting, man. I it's so lonely at times, or not lonely. It is a little lonely
Yeah.
because I'm just always on the road. Like last year alone, 2024, I did 272 days of travel
Good
out
night.
of 360 five. So it was one of those times where it's like, man, I am doing this stuff and I'm doing it without loved ones. So there's so many places I would love to go back to with a family member or something like that.
Yeah. Well, that's what a lot of people don't realize about the travel business overall. I mean, we're blessed. We're hugely blessed to make our living doing something as fun as travel, but there are sacrifices. There are lonely times. And thankfully, we have understanding family members and spouses at home who allow us to do it. So, Jeff, it's been wonderful to talk to you. Thanks so much for giving us some of your time today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Well, I sure hope you enjoyed that conversation with Jeff as much as I did. And hey, if you would like to see that interview or pretty much any interview from recent episodes of Gather and Go, you can do that on our YouTube channel. I will link to that in the show notes, or you can just go to YouTube and search for Gather and Go. When you do that, you will get to see Jeff and I talking face to face or screen to screen, as it were. And for many of our interviews, you might actually see some content that didn't make the audio version of the podcast. So if you are a video podcast fan, then let me encourage you to find us on YouTube, subscribe to the show there. You'll be glad you did. Now, I want to take a few minutes to highlight some of the things that Jeff said that I thought were really insightful for all of us in the tourism industry, because I want to make sure we don't miss these thoughts and the opportunities that they might lead us into. When we were talking about some of the cultural barriers that keep people from traveling, Jeff said, when I first started traveling 20 years ago, I was one of the only people in my community that had done that. When I got to go to these other places, I was one of the only Black people there. He said once people got to see pictures and videos and saw people that looked like them over there doing it, they said, oh, I can do that. You know, I'm so thankful that there are people like Jeff who took the plunge and jumped into travel, even though they didn't necessarily see themselves represented in the kind of marketing materials or photos or social media that are so prevalent among professional travel promoters. But I think this is also a challenge to the rest of us to realize that there are all kinds of people that may really enjoy the kinds of things we have to offer, but they don't know it yet because we never give them a way in to our experiences or our product. If we don't show pictures of people who look like them, if we don't actively reach out into their communities, if we don't position travel and our specific experiences as something that is available to everyone, including to people from their socioeconomic background, from their neighborhood, from their racial or religious background, if we are not active about doing that, we're going to miss out on bringing those people into the travel community. And that would be a tragedy for them and for us. Now, when I asked Jeff about the size of the missed opportunity in the plus size travel market, we're talking about people with larger bodies, Jeff said 42% of America is overweight or obese. We're looking at 160 million people that you all aren't catering to at all. I feel like that's billions of dollars left on the table. And he went on to say, I did an independent study one time where I asked if travel was more accessible to you, would you take more trips? And 98% said yes. Now, I'm going to be as honest with you as I can. This is a bias among many, many, many of us. It's a bias I'm guilty of myself. And unfortunately, there's a fair amount of hypocrisy in this because if almost half of America is overweight or obese, there is a 1 in 2 chance that that includes you or somebody you work with or other people that you collaborate with on travel marketing. So if we're only showing thin people, active people, attractive people in our marketing materials, well, number one, we're being dishonest with ourselves. We're being dishonest about who many of our travelers are. And we are creating an environment where people of a certain size may never want to experience what we have to offer. How big is the market? Well, it's hard to quantify, but if Jeff's right, we're not talking about millions of dollars. We could be talking about billions of dollars. And if you are a travel entrepreneur, you need to be finding a way to get a piece of that untapped market. Finally, when I asked Jeff what the travel industry can do to be better at accommodating and attracting different body types in travel, he said, I think we can modify any kind of excursion to be more accessible. There are harnesses that are made for my size. They have ropes and things that are my size. There are zip lines that can hold 5,000 pounds. There are small modifications that can be made. He said, buy an extra wetsuit that can fit someone. You don't need 100 extra. How about you just get 3 or 4 and have them there? He went on to say, if you're planning, think about it now. Have a plus size person in mind when you're developing the trip you're planning. And go ahead and ask, what's your size? You know, I think in travel, it's so easy to fall into that sort of fallacious one size fits all kind of thinking. And of course, there is a bell curve among humans in terms of height and weight and all those sorts of things. But Jeff makes a good point. It's not a big deal to keep 1 or 2 XLs or XXLs or 3 or 4 XLs in the back room. It's not that hard to find one or two ways to make sure you are accommodating and attracting people of bigger sizes or of smaller sizes or people of great height or anything else like that when you are putting your trips together. So when you're planning travel, when you're developing product, I would encourage you to look at your itinerary, look at your activities, and just take the extra step of asking yourself, is this something that a plus size person can do? Is this something a plus size person would feel comfortable doing? Is there anything about the process of registering, getting started, signing up that would make a person of larger size feel uncomfortable? And if the answer to that is not one that you feel right about, then stop and ask more questions. Ask your suppliers or vendors to help you out. Ask if there's additional equipment. Do the work ahead of time. And that way you solve the problem, you create opportunities for people to travel with you, and do it in a way where there's no stigma and where they feel really welcomed and valued. That is an important step for you and for them and for the entire travel industry. Great insights there from Jeff Jenkins. Well, if you've been keeping track of the news over the past few weeks, you have probably seen a lot of discussion and debate about the federal government, the size of its workforce, whether it's too big, whether it's too wasteful, whether it is getting the job done, whether it needs to be slashed and burned to become more efficient. And this discussion has gotten me to thinking about what are the things that the federal government ought to be doing in travel, or to make travel better, to make it more efficient, more profitable, or safer. That's going to be the topic of today's Hot Minute. Yeah, that's right. The Hot Minute is the portion of the program where I take 60 seconds to give you my unfiltered thoughts on an issue that impacts travel every day. And today we're going to ask the question, what is the number one thing the federal government should be doing for the American traveler? So let's put 60 seconds on the clock and get into it. The collision of a military helicopter and a passenger jet over Washington, D.C. last month highlights what many of us already know. America's air traffic control system is shockingly outdated. It's too soon to know for sure what caused the crash, but preliminary reports indicate that at least some of the blame lies in the control tower. Now, this is a tragedy for sure, but it's a symptom of a greater disease. America's air traffic control system is the laughingstock of the developed world. In some settings, our tower workers still use slips of paper to track planes from one area to the next. And this slapdash system is leading to an increased number of near misses on the ground and in the air. Our air traffic control problems have been ignored by leaders of both parties, but something has to change. It's time for Congress and the federal agencies to get serious about modernizing our air travel system, because nobody should die simply for being on the wrong flight. And that's the Hot Minute. That's how I see things anyway. Of course, as always, you're welcome to disagree with me, and we can still be friends. And hey, whether you agree, disagree, whatever you think, we would love to hear from you. You can send your thoughts, questions, federal government wish lists to podcast@grouptravelleader.com. I read every email that comes into that address. I really love hearing from you. And hey, you never know. Your ideas might just be the topic of the next Hot Minute. And while you're in the mood to give us some feedback, would you do me a big favor? Would you go to your favorite podcast playing app? And if you haven't already subscribed to the show, do it there. And while you're there, give us a rating, leave us a review. Those are super helpful, and I am so grateful to each of you who has done that so far. My thanks as well to Jeff Jenkins for joining us on the show today. On the next episode, I'm going to bring you a really fascinating conversation with Mickey Candola. Mickey is a tour director and a tech enthusiast who has figured out some incredible ways that you can use AI to make your tours better. You're not going to want to miss that. Until then, though, remember this. At the end of the day, we're all on this trip together, so let's make it a good one. See you next time on Gather and Go. Gather and Go is hosted and executive produced by me, Brian Jewell. Our publisher is Mac Lacey. Danya Simmons is our creative director. Ashley Ricks is our circulation manager and graphic designer. Our sales team is Kyle Anderson and Talisa Reck. To advertise on the podcast, call to Lisa at 859-253-0455. Gather and Go is a production of the group Travel Leader. For more information about our magazines, podcasts, and events, visit us online at grouptravelleader.com. This episode was sponsored by Colette. Colette provides industry-leading benefits to group leaders of all kinds, from banks to families, from religious groups to garden clubs, and many more. It doesn't matter where your group has been, it matters where they'll go next. Head to gocollette.com/groups to learn more.